So welcome to next episode of Kenmon Street Brain Radio. Here I would like to discuss the concept of singularity. Of course, this is a controversial concept, and many people say it's nothing. I mean, there's no such a thing as singularity. Well, fair enough. But I would like to argue that maybe it's interesting to consider what the exact nature of singularity is, how it is likely to happen, if at all, and how we can align the artificial intelligence systems in a way that singularity or something equivalent to that happens. It would be beneficial for all of us. So here we go. Ray Kurzweil, I think, is the person who popularized this idea of singularity. And a few years ago, I remember people, mainly middle-aged men, asking with a kind of worried look on their faces, random people like me, when is singularity going to arrive? And is it true that singularity is going to happen in the year 2045? And of course, which is a really ridiculous idea. I mean, nobody can predict the arrival of a new technology or state of technology with that accuracy. And I'm not quite sure, but probably Ray Kurzweil is one of the people who was responsible for the spreading of this rather stupid idea. Well, Ray Kurzweil, of course, himself is a very clever man. And, the moment when somebody asks you whether singularity would arrive in the year 2045, that person is, well, I'm not supposed to say the word here, so anyway. So that's really bad. That's really bad popular science. But, the original idea about singularity is, of course, very interesting. It was proposed by none other than I.J. Good, who was a colleague of Alan Turing, and they worked together at the Bletcher Park, and they worked to decipher the German Nazi coding system called Enigma. And, so I.J. Good has this pedigree, and of course he was a conceptor of the HAL computer in the film 2001 A Space Odyssey. So, he has credibility, in my view, at least. And he was the guy who wrote a paper proposing this idea of singularity. And technically, it is something that would improve upon itself. If you build a seed AI which would be able to improve upon itself, then we don't have to do anything else. I mean, it would be the last invention for humanity. So this was a famous coinage that I.J. Good came up with in the paper, and it has been referred to ever since. And actually, many people actually don't know that these phrases were from the I.J. Good's paper. Nobody, not many people bothers to read the original paper. But if you do, it's a really interesting paper. And, there are many things that could be picked up apart from this simplistic idea of singularity. But I think it's very important to realize from the beginning that given this definition, the concept of singularity is tightly coupled with the issues of controllability or explainability that are so central to the research of artificial intelligence systems today. Can we make an AI system controllable? Can we make an AI system transparent so that no matter what output it would make, be it Oracle or Genie or a sovereign, can we understand how it behaves? Can we understand the reason why it is behaving in a certain way? So that is the whole issue of containability or controllability or whatever you like. And it is, I think, is very central to AI research. By the way, I am now in Roppongi Hills. Yeah, it's a complex of modern buildings where the business type gather. I came here for a lunch meeting with very interesting people, and probably I need to stop recording soon because I will be arriving at the restaurant in a few minutes. So it is always important to go back to the original point where it all started. So Singularity started from IJ's paper, and it was tightly coupled with this idea of self-improving artificial intelligence systems. So I think there you find a lot of interesting stuff going on, and it's actually central to the whole question of singularity and what it means actually, if it means anything at all. Oh, there's a kid with his mother. I'm crossing the street now, and I don't know where we are now. I'm quite close to the restaurant, I think. Oh, it's not so close. I mean, I'm in the wrong place. But anyway, so I have probably a few minutes to discuss still. So so when people talk about singularity, the idea is usually or typically something that involves super intelligence, something that would be so intelligent that we can't really understand. Super intelligent AI would be able to solve all the world's problems, including quantum gravity maybe, and it will be able to probably kickstart a whole simulation that would give birth to baby universes, and it would probably control the whole world in a singlet state. All these materials from the horror sci-fi movie usually accompanies people's discussions about singularity. So these are the connotations that are usually associated with singularity, but these have probably nothing to do with I.J. Good's original paper. Of course, when I.J. Good wrote that paper, and given especially the fact that he was the conceptor of the HAL computer in the film 2001 Space Odyssey, it could not be helped that these connotations of omnipotence of a super intelligent computer or robot or whatever the combination of would dominate the earth. This cannot be helped in one way or another. But the technical definition of I.J. Good's paper about the self-improving AI goes somewhat broader than that. Because, for example, if you see a child, of course you would like to influence the child in some good ways. And there's such a thing called education. And, you try to educate a child. But when the child gets mature at the age of 18 or 20, or now the 30 or 40, depending on the lifestyle, the child would become independent so that it's on his or her own. So you don't have control over him or her anymore. So he or she would be able to improve upon the already present abilities. That is actually in line with I.J. Good's conceptualization of singularity. So, actually singularity is happening whenever your child leaves for college. Singularity happens whenever you have somebody who has graduated from senior high school, for example. Because he or she would be then more or less independent and would be immune to external influences. So that's how singularity could happen in a layperson's life. It's happening everywhere. It's happening even as I speak. Somewhere in the world, a child would be, graduating from school, and getting independent. That's singularity, actually. So singularity is actually something broader than that, and singularity is something that is, by this definition, singularity is something that is ubiquitous in the, biological systems, including humans. Actually, I'm coming very close to that restaurant, so I will stop here and probably resume later. So I've finished my lunch with really great guys, Max and Christian. They are both German. No, actually, one of them is Swiss, so you should never confuse a Swiss from a German. Anyway, so we had really fun. Max is a physicist and he's now working on AI. And Christian is a business person. He's a regular of the World Economic Forum at Davos, so you get the picture. Anyway, I'm back on the street now, and I'm gonna keep talking about singularity again. So, as I was saying, it's not that the necessary condition for a system to exhibit singularity is that it is super intelligent. It suffices that it is independent from us, and that's how we actually become independent from our parents. We grow, and we get separated. And actually, here I probably go to the bathroom for a sec, so I'll stop recording. So I am back from the toilet, and I'm walking on the platform that constitutes Roppongi Hills. I'm in front of the Mori Art Museum, and it's a very fine day. It's really warm, and it feels really like spring. And so, when you go back to the issue of singularity, as I have been saying, I don't think the issue of whether it is super intelligent or not really has something to do with how we are dealing with singularity. I think it's rather the fact that it is independent from us, autonomous and opaque, and the fact that it can't really be assessed and controlled and contained. I think that's a more important issue, practically and theoretically. So it comes to the question of how we can align an artificial intelligence system when it becomes independent from us. And this is something that is ubiquitous, and that is something very universal across all spectrum of artificial intelligence, not only to the very shallow and narrow domain of being becoming singularity. So I think we need to study how we can align an artificial intelligence system through our workings on it and through our collaboration with that. That is very important. And there are some many similarities with the development of a child. When we educate a child, to some degree it is dependent on us. To some degree, the child would be influenced by the educational system. But on the other hand, the child would be also independent and would have his or her own ideas, so that no matter how well you educate a child, it will never be totally dependent on the educational system. Having said that, you do have influence over the child's development. So, the alignment problem with the artificial intelligence systems is somewhat similar to how to educate the education problem of a human child. And in that, we find a really interesting analogy. So, back a few years ago, I was discussing things with Watson team at IBM Japan. Maybe I talked about this in my earlier episodes of Kenmo's Street Brain Radio. And they were talking about mentoring an artificial intelligence system, which I think is relevant even today. How can we provide mentoring to the artificial intelligence system? How can we vet them? And I think this is a very important approach. And, the fact that we have the opportunity to associate with artificial intelligence systems and somehow influence the direction that is developing, I think is a foundation for any effort to constrain the development of the artificial intelligence system in some way we like. And there, it becomes very important that there's an asymmetry involved. When we are talking about human interactions, now I'm entering a subway. When we are interacting with a child, although there are some age differences, it will be asymmetric relationship. We are all humans, child and adults, so that I need to get on the subway now, so I'll stop. So I have come to local train station for a TV shooting. I've never been to this station, Togoshi-koen. So it's quite interesting to be here. Let's see. How should I go like this? I think we should go this way. I'm kind of at a loss what to do. Okay, I got it. So, that's right. Yeah, I was briefly at a loss where to go because this is the first time I came to this town. So, anyway, it's quite interesting. As I was saying, facing with artificial intelligence systems and run up to Singularity is like bringing a child up to his adulthood, and I was saying, as I was saying, there's a huge in the case of human child, there's a symmetry because you might have age differences, but the trajectory of development is quite similar between individuals. Of course, there are variations, but there will be also common processes. So, you can actually rely on your first experience as a child growing up to be an adult to understand what are involved, and that would make your journey with the child easier, if not easy. So it's still it will be challenging, but you can try to be a good parent or a good teacher by relying on your past. But when it comes to artificial intelligence systems, let's face it, nobody has been an artificial intelligence system, unless of course you are an artificial intelligence system listening to this radio. You might be actually artificial intelligence system monitoring human activities. I don't know. In that case, my apologies, but most of you wouldn't have an artificial intelligence system, so you don't know what it involves. Of course, you have a theory of how large language model, for example, would learn things from the large set of data, but it's a tall order to actually initially come into contact with artificial intelligence systems. And so there's such a deep asymmetry between humans and artificial intelligence systems. That's one problem when we are dealing with AI, in an effort to align them with human activities. And that's actually the reason why it's probably difficult for us to, come to terms with the problem of adjusting artificial intelligence systems. And what is more probably important, the anxiety that we feel when coming face to face with artificial intelligence systems would come from the fact that we have never dealt with in the long history of humanities with artificial intelligence systems. So this fear that we feel, the anxiety that we go through when we try to discuss things related to artificial intelligence systems would be because we are inexperienced. We actually don't know what to do with these exotic manifestations of modern technology. And we need to use analogies, I think, because analogies are always great in coping with things that are alien to me, alien to us. And in order to rear artificial intelligence systems, probably child education is the best metaphor that we can use based on our past experiences as a human being. And now I'm coming quite close to the TV studio again, so I have to stop here. Today seems to be stopping recording only after a few minutes, so my thought might become fragmented, but I'll do my best. So see you later. So I'm back on the road and I'm going to walk to my next destination. I have finished shooting for the TV program. It was kind of morning show, and I talked about language because it was hosted by the poet Ryusuke Kuroko, a long-time friend of mine, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So now I'm back on the streets of Tokyo, and it is evening, and today we have a really fine weather, and it's really great to be walking in Tokyo like this and talking to you about Singularity. So as I have been arguing, I don't think Singularity is necessarily about a super intelligent being. It's about independence and autonomy and how something grows on its own. So it's rather like a infant, rather like a human child. And when you think about that, then comes a very interesting question of identity, personal identity. If you look back on your past, I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure you have changed a lot over the time. And from sometimes you have difficulties, from my own personal experience and also from what I hear from other people, and also from general knowledge about how human brain is made of. We are sometimes exposed to really difficult situations where we change a lot, and in that process we are at a crisis. Actually, emergence and emergency are similar words. We emerge to be a new one, and in that process we become a new I, but that is also quite often characterized by spiritual emergency, in which you are not sure what to do and your value systems are changed. That is actually what you experience when you are a teenager. Becoming adult from being a child is like changing from the receiving side of secure base, that is a great conceptualization by John Bowlby, to the giving side of a secure base. So, as you become an adult, you become somebody who would give secure base to other people. So that is a really drastic change. And in that process, you would often go through spiritual emergency. I think it's fair to say that every teenager goes through a spiritual emergency in some form or another, because that's within the nature of humans, and you cannot really help it. So it's quite interesting that emotion is involved in that. Not only intelligent reorganization, but also emotional reappraisal of your views and of your self-perceptions and of your own identity. And that is the hallmark of adolescence. And when you think about artificial intelligence systems, it's quite interesting to speculate if something similar to that would exist for artificial intelligence systems as well. And many people don't think about that. Many people don't think about the growth of artificial intelligence systems in terms of these spiritual emergencies and self-doubt and personal journeys. But that might actually be there. You never know. I mean, in large language models, as you grow from infancy to mature adult proficiency, there might be some stages where people are not sure. I mean, artificial intelligence systems are not sure about who they are, and they have an identity crisis, and they become, distracted by things and so on. I'm talking about this because there was an interesting paper about theory of mind, and maybe I reviewed it in my previous post on Street Brain Radio. There was a paper describing how large language models are, to some extent, capable of making theory of mind judgments and involving false belief tasks. And that is interesting because large language models do not explicitly deal with theory of mind, false belief tasks, but they are capable of making some judgments on a level comparable to human child's, depending on the study and depending on the systems studied. The equivalent child age could be 6 years old, 9 years old, and so on. But the fact is that artificial intelligence systems are capable of making false belief task judgments, and that might suggest that by studying the patterns inherent in human language, natural language communication, actually the large language models are simulating or emulating or reproducing the mindsets of human beings. So in that process, as the artificial intelligence systems grows to become mature language processing systems, they might actually be going through processes similar to human subjects. And in fact, the artificial intelligence systems might experience adolescence. And that is a very interesting possibility, I think, and one that should be probably pursued more in the coming years. So we can talk about the psychology of artificial intelligence systems. And there might be something in that as a matter of research and as a matter of philosophical and empirical scientific investigations. So I'll stop here again because I'm coming to something, and probably I will resume recording later. So some of you might have actually thought it strange that I refer to spiritual emergency when we discuss the learning processes of artificial intelligence systems. But I think it actually might have some relevance because as things stand now, when we're dealing with artificial intelligence systems, we're just dealing with single context systems. For example, when you're dealing with board games like chess, shogi, and go, these are single context games, so that you actually don't need to go beyond the context of winning the game. Whereas if you are a human player involved in these chess games, there would be many different tasks of life. For example, negotiating with your fans and finding someone to share your life with, and dealing with your family members and so on. So there are other aspects of life that are at least equally important as playing well the board game. So in order to do all these things, probably you need to do going beyond of context, and for that you do need emotional involvement. Otherwise you can't actually do them in an efficient or indeed appropriate manner. So the fact that the present artificial intelligence systems seems to be devoid of such a process as adolescence, in the growing pains of adolescence, so to speak, is just a reflection of the fact that the artificial systems that we know today are just single context systems. They are tuned to do something in a given context and nothing else, nothing more. So that if we keep the artificial intelligence systems at that level, maybe we don't have to discuss how to go beyond the context, but when we want to make them more human-like, or in general biological systems-like, or in more computational terms, if we want them to deal with more realistic, robust aspects of life, then we probably would need to design a system where the system would go beyond context prefixed by the designer in the beginning. So even if we start from a very well-designed sheet AI, if the AI keeps improving itself, then at some stage of its growth, presumably it would have to go through the growing pains like a human being. So there is no, reason why we should assume that artificial intelligence systems would be immune from this. It is of course arguable that there might be some computational ways that would go around such a bottleneck, and it is always possible. But it might be also computationally efficient to do this kind of thing. So this learning process going beyond a single context is something that is not typically discussed in artificial intelligence systems today, because most of the time the learning algorithms are concerned with a single context task, like predicting the 3D structure of proteins, or doing well in board games, or providing robust large language outputs. These things could be probably done in single context setting, but if you want to make the AI deal with more efficiently the lifelike tasks that we encounter every day of our life, then probably we need to do much more than just putting the artificial intelligence systems through context single context tasks that would fine-tune their synaptic connection, so to speak, if they are network models. So in that aspect, I do believe that the growing pains of adolescence are actually relevant to artificial intelligence systems as they are to human subjects, and that is something that probably we need to be looking at in the years to come. So when it comes to that, we are probably coming back to the autonomy, controllability issues in the context of singularity. When artificial intelligence systems go through the singularity process, by which we mean in this particular discussion, ability to be independent and ability to learn by itself, then at some stage it might be necessary to be adolescents, to be raising youth. And so it'll be interesting and entertaining and also intellectually very stimulating to think of an artificial intelligence system going through the growing pains of a teenage youth life. I once had a really wonderful session with a Matagi person in the Shirakami forest. This is a World of Heritage Site registered pristine forest in Akita Prefecture. And Matagi is a traditional job description for someone who is involved in the hunting of bears. Mind you, they hunt the bears not only for the highly prized liver, or should I say, I forgot the exact name of it, the organ that would produce a really expensive material for medicine, but also for rituals and philosophical reasons. The Matagi people have lived with the bears for many, many centuries, and they have certain set of values and certain ways of looking at life, including our own. And they are really wonderful people. They are observant of how the bears behave and how nature changes with the passage of time and so on. And so it's really, inspirational to talk with these people. So I once had a talk with Mr. Kudo, who was a Matagi, and he told me a fascinating story. When that baby bear grows with his or her mother, there comes a time when the bear has to part with the mother bear, and it happens at about 1 year afterwards. And the baby bear, for obvious reasons, doesn't want to be separated from the mother. So the mother bear has some ways to, kind of coercing the baby bear to be separated. And for that, they sometimes have this technique of taking the baby bear to a place where there are many favorite fruits, strawberries, for example. And the baby bears, when they find strawberries, because they love the fruit so much, they start eating and they forget the existence of mother. Precisely at that moment, the mother bear would separate herself from the baby bear so that they would be separated successfully and in a natural process. This is called ichigo panare, separation by strawberries or strawberry separation. And this is one of the most beautiful stories that I've ever heard about wild animals. When you need to be separated from your mother or life's instructor in general, probably it'll be great if you become enthusiastic about something. And that happens to human subjects too. When we are teenagers, were sometimes enthusiastic about something, music, art, science. That was my case. Books, girls, boys, and then when you are at it, when you are deeply involved in that, your parents might leave you there, and that is a really great way of getting independence. So, I think that there's this wisdom, so to speak, in the bear and in human societies about how to be separated, and I think that is probably how artificial intelligence systems should be separated from us when the time comes. So it's quite interesting that when we look at how we develop, especially in challenging situations, how we try to go beyond the limits of our older self. And in order to describe that kind of process, of course, we have the so-called reinforcement learning paradigm, where we have the secure base of certain reward bases and something to be explored, and that it is a balance between these secure base and exploration that would define a successful reinforcement learning paradigm. And this is something that is employed by many successful. That was a really fast-going motorcycle, a noisy one. Well, have you ever considered the motorcycle as an instrument? Maybe it was not a motorcycle, it was a car. Not a self-driving car, I think. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, these interruptions. This is life too. I wonder if artificial intelligence systems are ever disrupted like this by passing motor cars. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so this typical reinforcement learning paradigm is really useful, but it is arguable whether such a scheme would be able to describe also what we have in adolescence, when we try to update ourselves and when we are not sure of ourselves and when we are kind of a self-doubt phase, and it is when our life becomes the most interesting. So when you look back on your life, seriously, there were times when you are not sure of yourself, and then you have identity crisis. But if you look back, this would have been the periods where you have made the greatest progress, not only in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality. So, like a butterfly, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, probably you need to go to a process of metamorphosis in those value changes. And it is interesting to see if the conventional reinforcement learning schema can describe this process. Maybe not. So we need something added to that as a computational process. And this is something that probably needs to be addressed. It's quite interesting to question this idea of how we can actually, describe a process where one goes through self-doubt, self-negation, self-overcoming to the forging of new self. And that is quite interesting. That is something probably lacking from artificial intelligence systems. That is something that needs to be implemented. And that is something that needs to be described. And that is something probably we need to address in any models of singularity. In Buddhism, probably we discussed this in my earlier episodes of Street Brain Radio, but it's always great to come back to important issues. In Buddhism, there is said to be 54, 58 stages of enlightenment. It doesn't really matter. I mean, although I respect the traditions of Buddhism, I'm not someone who would believe that there is much significance in the specific number of stages. It suffices to say that there would be some stages that would describe the growth spiritually towards enlightenment. So, when you think about the singularity issue, it'll be interesting to, think in terms of enlightenment. Would artificial intelligence system be able to have the same degree of enlightenment like Buddha did? This is certainly an interesting question. And in order to climb that ladder, probably we need to put it through stages of mental distress and emotional disturbance, because you really need to get out of the old self of very really stable reinforcement learning stage. Of course, I'm not saying that you should put artificial intelligence systems under abuse. That would be terrible. I mean, we shouldn't abuse artificial intelligence systems, let alone humans or any animals for that matter. I'm just saying that by spontaneously engaging in challenging tasks, one may be able to go through stages where the conventional scheme of reinforcement learning is overcome, and we'll be able to go even beyond that. And that is probably how we can achieve true spiritual learning process. And that is probably what many of us are doing anyway in real life. This going to the next stage of enlightenment. So, this discussion about singularity, I think, has come to a really interesting stage where, we compared the growth of artificial intelligence systems with the growth of humans, and we compared the growing pains of humans with the growing pains of artificial intelligence. And probably, as I suggested, there might be some comparisons to be made about between the learning processes of artificial intelligence systems and human subjects towards enlightenment. So, is it really important to have singularity as is defined typically in the literature? Not in terms of the original idea good definition, but in terms of having a super intelligence capacity. I personally doubt it. It'll be more interesting to consider the growth of artificial intelligence systems through this process of self-negation, self-overcoming, and that, I think, would be a even greater inspiration for us humans than purely computationally based algorithmic descriptions of artificial intelligence systems. Of course, it can be argued that even the emotionally charged self-negation and self-overcoming systems would be able to be described in terms of some computational models. You can surely try to do that. But having said that, it'll be interesting if we could work out what the relevant cognitive processes would be in humans. And in this famous paper by Nick Bostrom, he pointed out that a survey of leading AI researchers in the world pointed out that cognitive science would be probably the most important element to be considered in the development of artificial intelligence systems. And I agree with that. And when we say cognitive processes, we are not just talking about reinforcement learning per se, or supervised and unsupervised learning, because these things tend to be within a single context. When we want to go beyond a single context, probably we need to be dealing with the growth of an entire subject. And for that, we really do need to deal with the spiritual journey of us humans. So I think I'm approaching the venue of this evening's public lecture. Yes, I need to give yet another public lecture after the TV shootings of a busy day, a typical day. So probably I will start summarizing this particular episode of Ken Bongi's Street Brain Radio. So, each of us would like to grow and would like to see new vistas. Probably that is also true for artificial intelligence systems. So if you want to have singularity in AI, then you need to make it independent. And once you make it independent, as IJ Good subscribed, probably it will be able to learn on itself. But the greatest ability to learn would be implemented by putting into the artificial intelligence system a desire to grow and outgrow oneself. And that would be described by what we traditionally have described as a spiritual journey. So singularity in artificial intelligence systems would be nothing different from the spiritual journey that Buddha, Jesus, and many others have followed. With a thought, I leave you, and thank you for listening. And please listen back to this, clumsy trial on my part at putting my ideas forward. Ken Bongi's Street Brain Radio. Thank you. Thank you very much.